Yeah, oh, I'm sure it's right. Well, that's okay.
This time I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, that's
I'd like to thank everyone for attending this evening. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda as we move to agenda item number 2? That will operate under that agenda. We'll move to agenda item number 3, which is to consider the approval of the minutes of the work session that the council held on September 20th, 2017, as well as the regular meeting and a work session on September 26th, and a special meeting on October 3rd. So the council does have the minutes of all of those meetings. Are there any corrections?
move approval.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is to consider the award of the bids for a crew cab pickup truck to be utilized by the Parks Department. So I believe this was also discussed by the Equipment Review Committee. And with us tonight is Preston Stensrud from the Parks Department.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight you have a recommendation before you that was brought to Council at another point. I think it was in July possibly. Since then, or at that time, we had voted to wait until 2018 to purchase the truck. Since then, we've experienced a significant issue with the truck we're trading in. It's going to need thousands of dollars in repairs, and I don't feel that the truck is worth putting that money into. And the new truck was already included in the 2017 bond. So I would recommend approval of the 3/4 ton to Lockwoods with trade in the amount of $31,447.32. That's including tax.
Thank you, Preston. Questions?
So Preston, I have a bunch of questions. And I think I know the answer to the first one. My assumption is you push snow with this, which is why you need four-wheel drive.
Yep.
Okay, that one I can deal with. How do these bids compare to the state low bid?
At this time, there's no state bid because we're so late in the year on doing state contract pricing that it's expired.
So all the bids from last year are no good?
Yeah, even when we were doing it in July, there was no state contract. So
These came in actually, I think, at or under the previous.
the
state
previous
result.
state bid, and I did talk to Lockwoods only because they were the low. If we would wait until 2018, the truck would be exactly the same model year. It would just have a 3 to 5% increase on it. So we went as far as what we'd get the identical thing. So.
And the third one, the last question I have is, why isn't there a Ford bid?
I can't explain that. I dropped them off to them, and that's all I can tell you.
Other questions? I think when this was discussed in July, that was the meeting. David, you were chairing the meeting. I was absent during that discussion.
I know that originally we were placing a 3/4 ton with a 3/4 ton for the half ton. At the review committee, we discussed the use of the truck, and we had the consensus that the 3/4 ton is a better vehicle. I know that Preston said this half ton only has, 73,000 miles on it. And I had made the comment, if this new one is maintained, this truck should, as a 3/4 ton, should run 150,000 miles. They're a better truck, it's a beefier truck. We may be spending more money. I know I debated myself, well, should we just replace the motor in that F-150? Again, it's a half-ton truck that's being worked too much. So I myself can justify it, but like I told Preston, this is a truck that should last 20 years. Plain and simple, as for what we use it for, this truck should be around for 20 years as a 3/4 ton. I think it's a good investment for the taxpayers and for the use that they're going to use it for.
And Preston, I think there was a discussion too that if, as we go with this, and that was one of the reasons we had two reasons really for the 3/4 ton, was A, the tow load that this truck would carry, and then the fact that it's really, really tough to put a plow on a half ton. And with the additional trails and the other commitments that the Parks Department makes for snow removal on behalf of the city throughout the community, it was practical to put this on. You also got a quote for a plow piece that goes with this from Bendrite.
Yep, Bendrite sells Boss plows. It would be the same as all the other plows that are on pickups in the city, airport, street, fire department, and the existing parks trucks. They are also the state contract holder for Boss Plow. That price installed is $6,280, which at the July meeting we talked about putting into the 2018 budget. I know Carla and I have had a discussion. There's additional bonding money left over from other equipment that's came in under budget. So we can do either. We can wait, or we can do it all now and just be done. Since that funding's available, I'm fine with either. So.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the award the 2018 Dodge Ram bid to Lockwood Motors in the amount of $31,447.32, including trade-in and sales tax, and add the Boss Plow with Bendrite as part of that package so that the truck is completed. Carla, there's bonding money, funds more than enough available on the cost savings to put the entire package together, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'd make that motion.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. The motion is the purchase, the 3/4 ton truck as recommended, and accept the quote from Bendrite Fabrication for the snowplow to mount on. Now, discussion on that motion.
I do have a good question. Is this also included in the 2018 budget? So can we lower the budget in 2018 by the amount that we're spending today? The pickup and the plow?
Yes, I had added additional because we were short on that 31. Plus I added the price of a plow.
Into the 2018 budget?
Yep.
So that can come back out of that budget?
Correct. I can't remember the exact dollar amounts, but I know that I bumped up the price of the truck a little. Even though the bond money was already there, the difference of that plus the plow, I think I added like $8,000.
And that's fine. I just want to leave that money in 2018 because all of a sudden it's not saying you would spend it, but it's laying there saying we have extra money next year. Well, no, now it's been removed from that budget for 2018.
Good point. Yep,
And that would be in the capital that we haven't reviewed yet. So.
yep. Perfect.
Carla, I mean, this is kind of a last-minute change here to add in the plow. Have we looked at, are there any other pressing needs where the money could be used for something that is a higher priority item?
So the money was bonded for 4 pieces of equipment. And in the when we bond for it, it has to be used for those 4 pieces of equipment. And since this plow is part of this piece of equipment, I can add it to that. But any funds that are remaining after those 4 pieces have been purchased have to either go towards either the further purchase of other equipment in our other bonds that maybe have shorted, that the estimates came in over what our, or it has to go back to the bond debt and pay off the debt. So any funds that are remaining now after the purchase, I will look at what we have left, and all of our other bond equipment certs have been purchased, and we had enough money for those. So this money would then have to go back into our debt to help assist pay back that bond. So those monies will be put towards the payments of those bonds.
So the choice is either to buy the plow or pay down the debt then?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Preston.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 5.
That's awesome.
Agenda item number 5 is the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen on the consent agenda, which include the resolution, which is amended resolution for the final plat of the DAR addition to consider the application for the temporary on-sale liquor license for Sunrise Rotary Club for an event on November 9, 2017 at the Red Baron Arena Club Room. Consider the application for a temporary on-sale intoxicating liquor license for Avira Marshall for an event November 14. Consider the renewal of the employee life insurance plan with Oaks, Inc., and to consider the approval of the bills and project payment. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants to remove for purposes of separate discussion?
Item 7, please.
Any other item? Pause for just a minute while that gets moved. Okay, so now,
To approve consent agenda as written.
Second.
motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll now move to agenda item number 10. This is the application for the Rotary Club. I assume you want to abstain?
I'll need to abstain on this one.
I'll move approval of the application.
Second.
Motion by David, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll note the abstention. Agenda item number 11. Agenda item number 11 is the item that was discussed last time regarding the restricted parking on Hamden Street. It was tabled at our last meeting, so I would entertain a motion to remove it from the table.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Well, I'm sorry. I was busy making faces at the motion maker. Come on, let's go here. There we go. Sorry.
So now that motion passed. So we'll now consider the resolution as well as public input on the resolution. So Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you remember, the request was brought up by staff that it was very difficult to do either snow removal or sweeping on this section of Hamden Street just south of Saratoga Street. And we took a look at it, and it's a very narrow street. As a matter of fact, there's a section that's about 6 feet narrower than the rest of it. So we put together a map and showed the dimensions and things like that. So after the last meeting, we did send out a informational meeting notice to all of the adjacent property owners and asked them to give their feedback as far as if we did restrict parking, what they would like to see. We gave them 3 choices: no parking on one side anytime, no parking on alternate sides by the day, no parking on alternate sides by the week. And we got back information. We had 3 of them that responded with no parking on one side anytime. So not alternating parking, no parking on one side or the other. They didn't specify which side they'd rather have parking, but on one side anytime. And a second property owner that owns 2 properties indicated he'd like to see no parking during a snow event. So no restriction for summertime, and no restriction for timing, but just like if snow fell, no parking. And so that's what I'm bringing forward. And if there was anyone that came to the meeting that would like to express an opinion of those 3 or 4 methods or any other one, we'd certainly like to hear.
Okay. Input from either anyone in the audience or council members. Greg?
My only concern, Glenn, if we did the, no parking on one side anytime, that doesn't really solve the snow removal issue then. There's, because at some point in time, you'd want to have both sides clear so that you could move the snow, correct?
We would do that on declaring a snow emergency. So for instance, if we got 8 inches of snow, and then if we declare a snow emergency, they all have to be gone during that 12-hour or 24-hour period of time, however long we
Or until
declare
it's
it.
plowed curb to curb.
Right, yes. And so that would entail pulling all the snow to the one side until it was high enough that we would come and remove it. We do that periodically if we've got a lot built up, but the 3 indicate just have no parking on the one side anytime.
I like that idea.
Jim, what do you think? I mean,
What side? Because you have parking lots on the east side of it. I mean, did they indicate what side?
No. That's what they didn't indicate. So there's 2 issues there. One side is primarily residential. The other side is primarily commercial. And so, so most of the on-street parking takes place on the residential side.
And then when you come to street sweep, you have one side that'll never get swept.
Unless, again, we send out a notice. But
And that
that
costs the taxpayers extra money to
Oh, yeah,
send out.
sure.
I like the idea of saving taxpayers money.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the alternate, because
Mhm.
you don't have to send out notices to do that. You don't have to send out notices for snow emergency.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you alternate the sides and we save the taxpayers money.
I did like the suggestion if you went with alternate on the weekly basis. We do have daily on our downtown parking lots because we have daily needs for different people parking it, you know, and wanting to use the lot every day of the week. So the weekly time, I did talk with the department, and they said they didn't have a preference because they would fit that cleaning into their schedule no matter how we set the schedule. So they were agreeable to any schedule.
With regard to street cleaning, you run into that problem with any neighborhood. I mean, people will leave their cars out there and then they got to go around them, whether they have parking. I mean, so I think that's a problem common in all neighborhoods, that you can't clean all of the streets because they have parked cars there.
In
So
this
it's not
case-
unique to this area.
No, but in this case, it's so narrow that they
Right.
don't just want to take the sweeper down the center because there's cars parked on both sides regularly.
I tend to agree with the people that took the survey that it's less confusing if you have no parking on one side than if you alternate back and forth. It's just a less confusing situation. Am I right that on the residential side, it's pretty well straight across, straight down the street? I mean, there's no ins and outs. It's
There
on
is.
the business side that it goes in and out.
No, it's on the residential side. It's on the westerly side of Hamden Street where I think we have a picture of, yeah, there. That's the
So that's-
residential side that goes in 6 feet.
Okay, so I would think that the one where it goes in and out, it'd be the one where you maybe have the parking, and then where they don't park would be the straight one. It'd be easier to clean if you could go straight down a street than if you had to weave in and out.
And that's the commercial side.
Right.
So if in snow removal, if you took it from west to east, put it on the commercial side, how much additional difficulty does that make then for the commercial businesses? Because there's no boulevard, at least on the westerly side, you've got 6 or 8 feet of boulevard that you can put the snow on, and then if you had to, you could wing it back off of there if you had to haul it out.
It's a difficulty. There's arguments both ways.
Right.
Because no matter what, even if you do alternating sides, you will be pushing it half the time one way,
Yeah.
half the time the other.
It almost seems to me, if we make the decision on this and we make it one side only, you're almost gonna be in a haul, a plow, windrow, and load on that, anytime there's any significant plowable snow, you're gonna have to load it.
Yep. I agree. And that,
And the other
That's
thought,
not the end of the world, it's not a
No.
huge street.
the other thought, well, on the point that it's not a long street, that was my thought after we discussed this at our last meeting, that, you know, this might be the street to try that on, you know, alternate week to week, because it is a fairly short street, and then we can see how it works.
I mean, I'm open to anything, but I think it's something that's never been tried, Marshall. Once we do it, I think it's something people will get accustomed to, and I think they'll like it, because your car is never plowed in. And if you plow the snow always to the the east side, aren't there businesses that have parking lots, like Carol's, that abuts up there?
Yep.
So, do they blow their snow back into the street?
Yes, typically.
Yes.
So that's what I mean, that if we do it that way, he's gonna have to load it every
You're
time.
gonna have to
he
load
plows.
it, because otherwise we're pushing, and there's a lot of parking areas along there that,
Well,
there's
the-
no good solution here.
No,
The winter side, Jim, to what you're talking about, is every other time they plowed it, they'd have to.
It goes to
load
the
it.
other side.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's a benefit to that. I'm not opposed to let's try something new. I think that's a good idea. And I think understanding that when you plow it to the commercial side, that's the week you load it.
And I think the people on the commercial side, I'm sure they want, if you put the cars on the west side, like you said, they'll be complaining that there's snow being pushed to their parking lot. Because you'd wing everything to that side, wouldn't you?
Yep.
And you currently do not do that, I'm assuming.
well, and the street is narrow enough so that we have some streets that are wide enough. This would almost be like half the street being pushed to your side anyway.
But I'm
Yeah.
currently now, if we pushed all the snow that way all winter long,
Oh, you'd have to pick it up at some
yeah,
point.
I think at some point those businesses would get upset.
You
Really
load,
once,
you
but-
load out Saratoga in that intersection anyway, so it's not like you're not there with the blower and the haul trucks already.
Right, in the glass shop,
Yes,
all their parking lot comes out in the street.
yep. And the back lot by the chamber and all that comes out into Saratoga.
Yeah.
Yep.
Other thoughts?
If we do it on a trial balance or trial basis, we need to consider feedback and see if it is working. If it's not, then some changes have to be made. And I'm willing to try something, but if it's a failure, then we got to redo it.
Maybe another comment is, we won't be ticketing and towing unless we're gonna do removal. We don't do that in the rest of the community either. So even if we have, if for instance, we have a street that's signed one way or the other, we generally don't ticket and tow them. They might get a ticket. We will never tow them unless we are really doing removal.
So yeah, you have the resolution before you that would provide the restricted parking on the alternate sides.
I would make a motion that we provide signage for alternate parking on a weekly basis, starting on Sunday.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Second motion by Jim, seconded by Craig. John, discussion on the motion?
Just wondering if you'd be willing to take a friendly amendment on that and just put a 1-year look at it.
I'd be willing to do that, yes.
Yeah,
So
just,
just incorporate it in your motion and your second.
Sure.
I got one other item, is just a comment that last time talked about, asked the newspaper to do a story on it, and you did, so thank you.
Glenn?
And we will send out if we do it on a weekly basis, we'll send out a calendar that shades the week, because when you go every other week, sometimes it goes from first and third to second and fourth because of 5 weeks, month.
5
So-
Sundays.
Yeah.
There's
So-
never 5 weeks.
Right. So we will put out a calendar that people can use on their refrigerator or something.
The calendar works for residents, but what about customers of the businesses and don't have a calendar?
We'll give it to the business owners so they can post it and they can do whatever they want to with it.
My familiarity with that street, though, the parking in the back is typically for the employees.
Yes.
The patrons park on the side or out in front.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote on the motion. Motion passes. Agenda item number 12. Agenda item number 12, to consider the approval of the employment agreement between the City of Marshall and Sharon Hansen for the position of City Administrator. So with us tonight is Gary Wires with David Drown and Associates, the search consultant that assisted with the recruitment and process that the council went through on the ultimate selection of the preferred candidates. So, Gary, first off, thank you for your efforts all along in this process, and thank you to the council, because the council put significant time into reviewing applications and going through materials and then the interview process. So, Gary, I'll turn it to you, and you can give the overview of the employment agreement, which is the same boilerplate agreement that comes from the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities that has been used for the previous two city administrators. Gary?
Okay, thank you. It's good to be with you here this evening. Last week, when you, as a council, directed me to work with the mayor and with Sheila on negotiating a contract with Sharon Hansen, that process was initiated immediately after you met as a group last week. Throughout the course of several days, we were in negotiations with Sharon Hansen, and now you see the results of that in front of you for your consideration. It includes a start date of November 16th. She needs to give about a month's notice to her current employer, which is very standard. Salary is step 4 on your scale. The language in the contract includes a January 1st bump, which is standard operating procedure for you. The only reason it was included in here was just to articulate that it is going to be a bump as of January 1st. That would happen regardless of whether or not it was in the contract, but seemed to make sense since we're so close to the end of the year to actually include that. And then the rest of the language, I mean, is really pretty straightforward, I think. I don't know that it's worth commenting on any of the specifics. Again, it's very consistent with what you have all seen before and now what you've had a chance to review here as well. So maybe with that said, I can just take questions or comments from the group.
Thank you, Gary. Sheila, anything you wanted to add?
I've had a couple of meetings with Sharon since the interview process, and I have to say that I am very excited to start working with her, and staff are excited as well. We did tour through the building. She requested that on Friday afternoon, so we did tour a portion of City Hall, and she appears very excited to begin working for us as well.
Very good. Questions the council may have?
Mr. Mayor?
Craig?
Under Section 9 in the contract, it talks about relocation. Is Sharon indicating a willingness or an intention to relocate into the city of Marshall?
So that is that provision is simply there in the event that that were to occur.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. One is in the termination benefits. I noticed in the termination benefits that if we should terminate the contract, the employee is entitled to 6 months termination pay and I believe also health insurance benefits. Is that correct?
If you terminate without cause.
And under the reason I brought that up is under the prior city administrator contract, I think it was 3 months. So it was 6 months under this one and 3 months under the prior contract. Is there a reason why this individual is getting an extra 3 months of termination benefits?
So the International City County Managers Association recommends a year. 3 months is generally a starting point for negotiations, and 6 months is the result of negotiations.
Okay. Well, it just didn't seem to be consistent. You know, we had
It is
3
not.
months before, and now we had 6 months, so it's an increase of 50, or
Well, there
it's
was
double
no
what it was before.
negotiation
All right.
the first time.
The other thing is, I believe with the prior city administrator contract, there was 0 sick day leaves given. And in this contract, I believe that she starts off with 24 sick leave days. And so that's a difference.
Again, that is a negotiation that Ms. Hansen took upon herself, and there was no negotiation of that with the prior administrator.
24 hours.
24 hours, yeah.
24
You
hours.
said days.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
So
sick leave
three-
hours.
3
correct.
days.
Yeah, 3 days. But there is a difference between the two contracts. I do have some questions regarding the relocation expenses. And I know that under Minnesota law, maybe it's Minnesota statute 415.16, we cannot require the city administrator to live in the city of Marshall. I realize that's the law. The question is, what about the relocation costs involved here? And I did some studies, and where Ms. Hanson lives now, it was about a 36-minute drive to her current employer, and it's going to be about a 38-minute drive to Marshall. So it's a comparable drive. And in her previous job, she decided to commute and not live in the city of, or even in the county of Pipestone. So there is a possibility, probably a strong possibility, she's not going to live in the city of Marshall, and she has the right not to live in the city of Marshall. But with regard to the relocation costs, I noticed that we provide $7,500 maximum in relocation assistance. And this would not only cover the cost of moving, but also, hotel rooms or rental or whatever. So it also includes temporary place of housing. Temporary housing is included. The question I have with regard to that is this. She's not required to move to Marshall. Would she be able to use that $7,500 to pay motel rooms in Marshall or rental in Marshall for a short period of time, even though she decides not to move to the city of Marshall? Would we still cover that cost, or would we cover the $7,500 only if she ends up moving to the city of Marshall?
So that would be a relocation expense, so it's only for relocation.
But it does cover temporary housing too. And so I just want to make clear that we're not going to be paying for motel rooms or rental and if she decides not to come to the city of Marshall.
We would not. You are correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make that
It's a
clear.
relocation clause, and that is the only way that we would be paying that out.
And I noticed on the salary schedule then, she comes in at step 3, or step 4 on the salary schedule. The previous administrator came in at step 1. And the previous administrator had prior city administration experience. Ms. Hanson doesn't have any city administration experience. She has county administration, but not city administration experience. So I guess I'm wondering why the previous administrator came in at step 1, even though he had city administration experience, whereas the current candidate here is coming in at step 4, and she has no city administration experience.
So I can't explain why the previous person chose not to negotiate. So I don't know is the answer to the first part of your question. This is a highly qualified candidate, has managed a similarly sized organization for 12 years, starting at step 4. You only have 6 steps. There's a big gap between the steps, so there isn't a lot of room in between those. Seemed like it was justified to me.
And the information I'm going to give here is public information. It's not confidential information. But in her present position, she's making about $107,000 a year.
Which goes to 110 January 1st.
Well, she's making $107,000 this year.
Okay.
And we're offering $122,000, which is a $15,000 increase for her. I believe when we brought in our previous administrator, we brought him in at about a $98,800 salary. And again, you can mention the fact that there's negotiations involved.
What was he making before he came? Did you check that?
No,
I think
I
it was
don't.
in the 70s.
Right.
So I think it was over $20,000 increase.
The other point I would want to make is that we have a Lyon County administrator, and that person is making $112,000 this year. And so that person's making $112,000, and we're bringing our new one in at $122,000, which will increase to $126,000 or $27,000 in a few days. So at least $10,000. This person being paid $10,000 more than the county administrator. And the county administrator for the county of Lyon is a pretty important position.
I
And
think
we
your
have
pay scale is significant.
and we have 25,673 residents in Lyon County, whereas in Pipestone County it's like 9,300. I think that when you say we're bringing the person in at 122,000, that's for about a month and a half. Actually, In a month and a half, that person's going to be making $126,776. So that's really, in a sense, what their new salary is going to be, because it's only going to be a month and a half before they receive that
Which is why I
salary.
put that in the agreement.
Right.
Okay.
And then, so, I mean, actually, that's probably what we would normally consider their starting salary to be, because in a few days, that's what it's going to be. So according to the salary schedule, you're bringing this person in at step 4, correct?
You are.
Well,
I'm
okay,
not.
we're bringing it at step 4, and then in 2018, they're going to stay at step 4? There's not going to be a step increase?
That's
then?
correct.
So they're frozen at that step for this 2-year period then?
For a full year, yes.
Glenn, how long has the Lyon County Administrator been there?
I'm not sure, I haven't taken.
That would be apples to apples.
Well, it's important to look at pay scales.
Right.
He might be topped out. I mean, pay scales are very different in counties than they are in cities as well. So, I mean, I could come up with all kinds of comparisons as well.
You just have to do apples to apples. And it's what the going market rate is.
Right.
And the other point would be, the council did authorize Gary and myself, Sheila, to negotiate.
Right.
So I would caution us on renegotiating a contract.
Right.
I guess my concern is that in our negotiations, the city of Marshall is not known for tough negotiations as far as I'm concerned. I feel like we are not tough negotiators. I think we should be tougher negotiators. And the question is not whether or not we're going to offer a contract to her. The city council voted to offer a contract to this individual. The issue is before us is what should be the terms of the contract. That's what we're voting on, whether or not we approve of these terms or not.
Right.
We are going to offer a contract. We've offered her employment. It's just a matter of what the terms will be.
I think it's important to follow up on the mayor's comment, though. I mean, to make a comment like it was not a tough negotiation when you're not part of it seems, I mean, it's easy to make the call from the stands.
In the end, though, you look at the terms and determine, that kind of helps determine whether or not you're tough negotiators or not.
Or you
What
didn't,
terms
or you
end up
have
with.
no outcome.
What's that?
Or you have no outcome, which is
No.
maybe one of the objectives.
It could be.
Yeah.
You never know. But I mean, if one side is giving, the other side is taking, and there's not too much negotiations. And I wasn't part of the negotiation, so I don't know how
Clearly.
tough it was or not. This person indicates that they want to be part of our city administration. So I think there's an incentive on the part of her part to sign the contract.
So you've done
And
this quite a bit, I take it, to understand how this all works.
I'm not saying that. I'm not making that comment at all.
Okay.
I'm just saying that there's incentive on her part. She applied for this position. She evidently wants the position. She's going to get a substantial increase in salary. And so I just, from my standpoint, I feel like we could have been tougher in the negotiations. And
Okay.
I believe that we are overly generous on some of the terms. That's my opinion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to comment. So, understanding and acknowledging where Councilman Baracola is coming from, and I apologize to Lawrence Stoneberg that he got brought into this discussion without asking to be invited in, but we advertise this position. We advertise what the salary package is. If Lauren or any other individual was interested in advancing their position, they could have applied, and we would have considered that, and they may have well gotten an interview, but he didn't. Sharon Hansen did, okay, and she's qualified,
Along with 24 other
along with
people.
24 other people. So I think to sit here now and pick that apart and compare it to somebody else who wasn't a successful candidate, I think does a serious disservice to the council, to the process that we put in, and to the candidates that we interviewed, and I'm honestly kind of embarrassed.
I think you're misstating my position. I never brought Mr. Stromberg in this
Yes, you
conversation.
did.
I said his salary.
Yes, you did. You
I'm
brought him
doing,
in.
I'm doing a comparison of salaries, not of him as an individual. I'm not saying he should apply for the position that or anything else. I'm saying you compare positions and what people are being paid. And
we
his
should compare
information,
your wages
his
and my
his
wages.
wages are on the website for Lyon County. It is public information.
Yep,
We
so
have
is
every
yours and
right.
mine.
Yes, it is. Mine is too.
Yep.
Mine's been in the independent newspaper before.
Yep, I've seen it.
And so I'm just saying, we can make a comparison of his salary to what we're offering here. I mean, if they're comparable positions, they should be comparable salaries.
So point of order, Glenn, I'm going to bring us back to the agenda item. And the agenda item is to consider the employment agreement. Are there any other questions about the employment agreement as it has been proposed? Steve, you have a
No,
question?
the only comment that I have is again, I appreciate Councilmember Bear Kohler's statements, but we did as a council authorize the mayor and Gary to do the negotiation. We're not in the business of micromanagement. I trust the mayor, I trust Gary Wires. I think that the negotiations have been negotiated to the best of their ability to get what we want with a good administrative candidate at the best deal that we can drive, and that's what it is. So I would move that we accept this contract as written.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion on that motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Sheila, for, you will still be interim until November 14th, but the,
16. Say, was there a little cheer on that end of the table, I think? Yeah.
Yeah, how many days, hours, and minutes?
37.
so thank you very much. We'll move then to agenda item number 13, the wastewater hold effluent toxicity testing proposal with Bolton and Mink. Glenn, do you want to introduce this? And then Bob Van Moore from our wastewater department is also here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bob, you can go right up there. The reason for this item is that we verify to ourselves what's really the issue of our whole effluent toxicity failures that we've had. Prior to making a considerable investment in the process and knowing if in fact what constituent of the water is creating the issue, if any. So Bob, if you want to just go ahead with the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This has been brought up before, and what happens is we do have a limit for whole effluent toxicity in our NPADS permit. We are failing that right now. There is something in our effluent water that is causing toxicity to the biota in the stream, basically. And the whole effluent toxicity test is a test where we take our effluent water and we try raise Ceradaphnia dubia, which is a water flea, and fathead minnows in it. And what we have to do is we have to have so much of a percentage of survival rate and reproduction rate for those two species. And what's happening is there's something in our effluent that is not letting that happen. We're failing it. And we're pretty sure, we've done some of this mock testing in the past, and we think it's the salty discharge parameters that's causing it. Chloride's one of those. We've done some, we kind of pinned it that it probably is something to do with chlorides. We don't know if it's chlorides along with some other constituent, sulfates, magnesium. There are several different parameters in our effluent that are higher than normal. So what they'll do here with this testing, it's pretty elaborate. They're gonna test basically what the raw drinking water is now, our effluent water is now, and they're going to find out what all these constituents are as a baseline. And then we're going to do some bench water softening. We'll soften the raw water and our effluent water to both 5 grains and 10 grains. And we'll measure off of those samples, we'll measure all the constituents that are in there. So we'll have a baseline of what's in the current water, what's in the softened water to the 2 different degrees. Then we'll take that and we'll send those samples off to Minnesota Valley Testing, which is one of the contracts in here. And they will test for 16 different parameters, and so we will know exactly what's in all those water samples. And then after that, what we do is we send it to Environ to do the mock testing. They're out of Tennessee, and they will build a mock effluent out of distilled water, add in all the constituents that are in our current water levels that we've tested, and then they'll be able to adjust those levels to see if we are getting survival at the different levels that we're mocking up to. So it's pretty elaborate testing. It's expensive, but this is probably the only way we're gonna figure out where we're at. We've been out of compliance for probably 4 years now on this, and we gotta get to the bottom of it. We got a strong feeling that chlorides is part of it, the salty discharge parameters are part of it. If we get into the MMU softening project and we get that water softened down, we're gonna be removing a lot of those constituents already. So we're hoping that that will alone bring us back into it. But the proposal would be if we find out it is sulfates or something that we can't remove with the softening system, then we'll have to look for an alternative method of trying to treat that, so.
Okay,
So
and
will Environ do the end water treatment after the partial softening is done, you know, to simulate what we expect in a year or 2 or 3 water quality will be coming into the city?
Yes, that's the part of it. When we soften down to the 5 and 10 grains, that will be what we're expecting out of the water treatment plant at different levels that we can adjust to.
And they'll use that same process that the water filtration plant will use for lime softening and the other additions out there. Will that be part of their mock test then, so we can look at it post project?
Yes, that'd be, they're gonna simulate that water softening with the soda ash and the lime to get to where we're gonna be supposedly, so, yep.
Questions? Glenn, you had?
that was the exact comment I was going to make. The reason that we're going to 5 and 10 grains is because that's the proposed level of softening. So that was a good question. The other thing that's important is if in fact we would do those improvements and not pass our toxicity testing, we want to know that in advance. We don't want to assume that we're going to be taking care of the toxicity testing because we're reducing the chlorides. So that's why we're doing this now. So if there's something else we should be modifying or changing, there could be any one of those parameters that would affect the toxicity. Now, once we do that testing, there may be a conversation with the Department of Health concerning variances to the permit. If in fact it's not reasonable to remove any specific item that's other than RO, and we certainly aren't going to go there. So there is a chance that we can't meet it. That's what this test is for.
And the common sense of asking for that variance is the fact that we are not the only contributor, but we're one of the most significant contributors. So it's hard for us to not be the focus start point.
Definitely.
John?
One of the other things is, there's an assumption, well, the chloride limit is, I think, 261.
Yes.
Is that,
Yep. that's
are
what
we
we're
going to be
targeting.
doing a test at the 261 level to see if being just in compliance or right at that point that we still pass the
Our
the
intent
test on our
is
flight
just to go
minnows?
to the 230, which is the in-stream standard,
Okay,
so, yeah.
all right. Thank you.
That gives us a pretty wide variety of the different levels.
Steve?
Bob, have you gone to, I mean, this is expensive. Are there other labs that have been vetted for cost? I mean, they're not the only labs in the nation.
No, they're not. They have done some work for us previously. There is very few that actually would do this to the point that they're tearing this down and rebuilding our effluent water. So I'm comfortable that that's as good of a price as we're going to get. The one thing in the proposals I see is Bolton and Mink has a proposal of up to $5,000 for meetings. I just don't see that we would use that money, but we may have one meeting as a summary meeting when this is all said and done, but I don't think it would even come into that $5,000 range. So the Bolton and Mink may come in a little bit less actual costs.
Any other questions? Thank you, Bob. You have the recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation for a proposal, Bolton Mink.
Motion by John, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by David. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor, the only thing I'd like to say is that when we are dealing with bids and costs, it's always nice, kind of government standard to get a couple.
Other Discussion on the motion?
Just a question about the motion here. So the motion is to approve the proposal from Bolton and Mank for $15,000, and that's an estimated amount. As far as the other fees, is the motion include the other fees here? The $1,644 and the $15,732, are they considered part of this motion?
I guess I just mentioned Bolton and Mink, but it was my assumption that it would include all the testing that's involved. So the
Bolton might put this
32,000.
package together.
Yes, it's one package.
So the total estimated cost is $32,376.
And so we are approving so do we,
Up to that amount, up to that amount.
and so do we sign a contract with the other two companies, or?
Yes, there's a proposal for each company in there.
Okay.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 14. Agenda item number 14, the North 7th Street Reconstruction Project, Fairview to County State Aid Highway 33. We have a change order to consider with R&G Construction. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This change order is for the reconstruction or revision of 2 sanitary sewer manholes, and would recommend approval.
Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 15 is the runway mill and overlay project. We have a resolution that would authorize the execution of the MnDOT agreement number 1029357. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can read in the background information, this was a grant program that the federal government was our first agreement with them for participation. That generates then the second portion of the MnDOT grant agreement for their portion of it. And as soon as this is approved then by council, we can award the already bid project with Dunick Construction of Marshall for the mill and overlay project. So we have given them awards subject to the approval of these 2 financing sources. The contractor did intend to do that yet this year. We recommend approval.
2 and 20 is the crosswind, right?
Yes, it's the Crosswind 220. That is the direction of the magnetic direction of the runway. 2 is 20 degrees, 020, and the other one is 20, which is going the other way, 180 degrees opposite. So it depends upon which way you're approaching the runway from.
David?
I'll move approval of the resolution.
Motion by David. Is there a second? Seconded by Steve. Discussion?
I think we touched on this a little bit last time about the dates of September 11th, September 12th, and that is not a problem then.
No.
The other thing is, I didn't hear there are a number of provisions, and one of the provisions says all construction and equipment installation contracts exceeding 3,000 contain or will contain a contract provision that discourages distracted driving. So do we have a form contract that and there's more of these in this award. Do we make sure that the contract that the contractors sign have every one of these required provisions in it?
Yes. The answer is yes. The federal grant requires that, and when they're paying, what was their portion, $640,000, that makes it, everything that they have in there a requirement to get those funds. So yes, at the pre-job conference, that's one of the things that we bring up, is any formal written sign-offs that they have to do.
So the contractors, when they bid, they're aware of all these provisions that are required of them.
They are, and most of the larger contractors too are familiar with federal and state projects for participation. So yes, it's the Buy USA stuff. There's a whole bunch of provisions.
Other discussion on the motion? Now we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 16. Agenda item number 16, consider the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed for the ice and snow removal and weed elimination. Once again, Glenn. Do you have this, Glenn, or is she?
I don't know if Glenn has this. This was put on by the city clerk. Jane, do you want to speak to this one?
Do you have a pen in this? Do you have a pen? I just need for signature. Thank you.
Thank you. During the year, when people do not remove their snow or mow their weeds, notices are sent giving them so much time to do this. If during that time they do not take care of it, the city authorizes this to be done. They are then billed for the actual cost plus an administration fee. The statement indicates that attached is the state or the city code that makes reference to why we are doing what we are doing, and it indicates on there how this will be assessed at the end of the year, and it will be added to their taxes. But in order to do assessments, we have to do a public hearing and notify them again. So this is to call for the public hearing. We will have a notice in the paper, and they will all receive a notice in the mail of the amount that will be added to their taxes. This is a one-year assessment only.
So two actions here. One is,
To declare the amount to be
declare
assessed
the
and
costs, and then after that, then call for the
Call for the
hearing on
public
the
hearing.
costs that have been declared. And I guess, Jane, I was a little surprised that there wasn't more. So apparently a lot of these charges have been resolved by the property owners.
I think it helps to put on there what the process is going to be if they don't pay.
Right.
And we do not bill them more than once, but the statement says that interest will be added every month on the unpaid balance. We're not going to spend money to send bills out every month, but we are going to add interest every month, and it's interest on interest until we come up to the end of the year.
Any questions? Steve?
How much is the administrative fee, Jane?
$50. That's set by fee resolution.
Question is, Jane, is this covering the activity within a specific 12-month period? And if so, what's the beginning and ending date?
They will be assessed when the resolution is adopted.
Right, but the cost that the city has incurred, I mean, we've got snow removal that goes back to last winter, obviously, but does it go back to last fall or to January 1?
No, this is January 1 billings, from January through now.
Okay.
It's on a calendar year basis.
Okay, everything that's been unpaid this calendar year
Yep.
to date. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jane. If not, I would entertain a motion first on the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed for, you have a question?
Concerning the snow removal, how is it declared as to when you are approached that there is a need for snow removal?
Glenn,
is
you want to
sidewalk
address
snow
that?
I can help with that
This
one.
would be sidewalks, but go ahead.
Thank you. This is the way it typically works. Typically, we do it on a complaint basis. So the city office receives a complaint, whether that's administration or any other department. And then that gets transferred to Public Works, and the street superintendent is asked to go out and inspect to see if in fact it has been done. And this is typical, okay? So then, normally, a notice is sent out to that property owner that says they must remove it, and I believe our ordinance says within 12 hours. Typically, we don't, We're not right there at 12 hours later to do it. But then it's re-inspected to see it's been done or not done by a certain time and date. If it hasn't been done by that certain time and date, they call the contracted snow removal service to come and do it. Okay, and we bid that out on a periodic basis, not every year. But the cost is very reasonable for that. Then the administration fee is added onto it and a bill is sent out. And then whether it's paid or put on specials is the ultimate result. So that's generally the process.
Glenn, on snow removal, there's not notices sent out.
We do contact the person for.
Because I had one last year that I was never contacted when they went along East Main Street.
Okay.
So there was no notices
Is
sent
that the
out.
one for a rental?
It was for a rental.
Okay, and so a notice may have been sent to the address?
No, there was no notice sent out, because other people along Main Street said there was no notices sent out. It was ice after the rainstorm on Christmas Day. It rained and it was ice.
Okay, in those cases where it's an emergency, where it's an ice and snow emergency, then it can be done. There is no notice.
I said there was no notices sent out.
If it's an emergency, there is no notice, because you wouldn't get the notice before the time is up to do the work. And that's by ordinance too. So those are the things that's the process. If we want to change the process, we change the ordinance.
That answer your question?
If it's an emergency.
Somewhat. Apparently, it's only on a complaint basis.
Yeah.
In other words, this could go on for weeks unless somebody complains,
Yeah.
Well,
That's
as I understand.
by statute, Dr. Affolter, it's 12 hours. That's the statute.
Yeah.
But if somebody doesn't complain about the snow being removed, so no one is notified that you have to enforce the statute,
Right.
so nothing is done. I'll give you an example. This is a funny one, because on Jean Avenue, which is a nice street in town, we have several residences on our side of the street. Then all of a sudden, we get up to a residence that is owned but not occupied. And then we get a stretch of sidewalk that is on Holy Redeemer's property. And there used to be a parallel bike trail and sidewalk. Now, part of the sidewalk has been put into the bike trail. So for a certain number of feet, we have from Whitney Street bike trail. I found out last year that that's under the Park and Rec, okay? And they didn't plow it appropriately last year. The bike trail that used to be there went on a curve. So they first plowed it this year on a curve and didn't follow the new pavement. Our little dog looked at that and said, I'm not going to walk out in that mud. Okay, so I called and they said, okay, then we're going to clear it off. And they did it to a T, as where the bike trail goes into the sidewalk. But the snow was removed from the street to that T. So now there's a section of sidewalk from that T to the end of the property of Holy Redeemer, which was not addressed by either of these venues of snow removal, because the city had to do that part. So I called the city and they said, okay, then we will finally get to it. And then in the same light, they cleared the private property one. When they did that, I could see the rig went all the way down to exit back to the street on the driveway next to ours. But my question is then, if I hadn't complained, so to speak, I'm on the record for having done that, I guess, our little dog looked up there and said, I'm not going to walk any further. The snow was so deep. And I pointed out the fact that that section of the sidewalk was used by children. Now, there's not as much foot traffic going to Holy Redeemer as when we moved in there 60-some years ago. But there is bus exit. Kids get off of the bus at Holy Redeemer and go down, and they were having to walk out in the street. So that's why I called to get that part of the sidewalks cleared. So if we hadn't policed it, we'd still been in that problem. So, and I don't know who got assessed, whether Holy Redeemer got some of assessed, or the owner of the property that's not occupied got assessed. We didn't, because even though they came down with the rig, ours were already cleaned off. So I don't know if you got questions to ask of me, I'll try to answer them, but
The only thing I would say, thank you for bringing that. Glenn, would you bring that to the attention of Kristen?
Sure.
So that will be taken care of appropriately.
in other words, could somebody clean, well, the park and rec cleans up to the T, and no one cleans the rest of it, and that's not the city, but the city had to come and clean it, not the park and rec, and it's just.
I mean, I
kind of a mess.
understand exactly what you're saying.
Thank you,
Yep.
guys.
Okay. Any other discussion on, I believe we have a motion. Any other discussion on the motion? We don't have a motion on the table, is there?
I'll move the resolution declaring the cost to be assessed for ice and snow removal and weed elimination.
I'll second.
Motion by David, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes, and then the second action would be the resolution that would call for the public hearing on the assessment.
I move that.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. Discussion?
I have a little bit. I think that's something that you should at least understand how we do sidewalk snow removal, because we don't have anyone that goes around the city looking for sidewalks to shovel. And so we only do it by a complaint basis. If that should be different, let us know, but that's the way we would do it.
I know city council members have, over the years received input, and have passed that along. I know, John, you did last year.
Okay.
Well, I think it should be a common sense thing. Rob's not here, but if police see the same, police are out all the time. Their job is to enforce the code. If they see a section of sidewalk that's not addressed time after time after time, they should bring it forward to you.
That's
their jobs.
And I think our staff also see on the weed elimination,
Yeah.
that property that isn't being taken care of.
Yep.
Right. Okay, other discussion on the motion? Not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 17. Agenda item number 17 is the application for the exempt permit for Southwest Minnesota State University Foundation for an event December 1st, 2017. Any questions on this?
I move the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve.
I just have one quick question. Why are we waiving the 30-day wait period when this is more than 30 days away? I'm just curious.
It's my understanding that the state will not issue the license until the 30 days is up if we do not waive it. And until they get their permit number, they cannot sell raffle tickets.
So because I see today's October 10th and we're waiving the 30-day period for raffle on December 1st.
Okay, they're going to want to sell raffle tickets as soon as they can.
Also, they can't sell tickets.
They can't sell tickets. They have to have that number on the tickets
Okay, that explains it. So they want to sell tickets tomorrow.
as soon as they can print them.
Okay, that answers it. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
They won't be selling until Thursday.
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion on the motion?
It makes sense now.
No, yeah, but on it.
If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 18. Agenda item number 18, consider appointments to various boards and commissions. The council has met on 3 different occasions and has interviewed a number of applicants for several different boards and commissions, and based on those interviews.
Pardon me.
Check what's in that coffee cup.
They'll declare a 5-minute recess.
I was reaching to get something like that.
Each exceeded your
Oh,
grasp.
dear God, did you catch it?
Greg, you were the last one I would have imagined that would have.
Possibly
I wasn't
first.
even sleeping.
Okay, as I was saying, based on the applications and interviews, I would recommend that Andrew Mortensen Kinchy be appointed to the Airport Commission, that Todd Ellis, Mike Carter, or excuse me, let me start over, that Todd Ellis be appointed to a term on the Cable Commission that will expire May 31st, 2018, that Mike Carter and Josh Julian be appointed to the Cable Commission for a term that will expire May 31st, 2019, and that Bruce Lamprick and Rick Herter be appointed to the Cable Commission for a term that will expire May 31st, 2020, and that Stephen Meister be appointed as the council liaison to the Cable Commission, and that Bruce Neef be appointed to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term that will end May 31st, 2020, and moving back to the Airport Commission on Andrew Mortensen Kinchy, that term would be a 3-year term that would end on May 31st, 2020. So I'd offer that as a recommendation and entertain a motion to affirm.
So, second.
Motion by Craig, by David, seconded by Steve.
You stayed in chair.
Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Just a word about, that was quite a few appointments. We certainly appreciate the active citizenship of the community members. We have over approximately 100 people that serve on various boards and commissions, and that's extremely important for the operations of the city. The Cable Commission is a reestablished Cable Commission because it was dormant for a period of time. So there will be some organizational work that will need to be done in terms of determining a meeting time schedule, that type of thing. So, okay, so I'll move us on to agenda item number 19, Councilmember Board Liaison reports. Mine have not met since we last met. Craig, you're okay to give a
Yeah,
report?
I'm fine. Girls, just for a note here, don't try this at home. These are trained professionals, okay? So thank you, Mr. Mayor. The library board met yesterday afternoon, and just a couple of key things. One is that they're doing a book return amnesty, and it's food for trade for book fines. And so that'll be posted in the paper and on the website. I don't have the exact dates here in front of me, but that'll be a pretty good event. That's a lot of good stuff going on there. There's a lot of things moving forward with the foundation and the Friends. Anybody that's interested in being either on the Library Foundation or on the Library Friends should go to the library and inquire. There's a lot of good things happening there, and new members would be more than welcome. And then and we also talked about, and I've talked to Carla, and so has Michelle and Lou, just talked a little bit about kind of the new system of accounting and moving funds, and I really appreciate Carla's work and cooperation with the library board on getting our things in order as we move forward. That just continues to improve, and we're actually looking at some lighting things to add more lighting into areas of the library. With the addition of the children's wing, we lost a lot of natural lighting, and so Meyer Electric was out there and proposed some new can lights and some other things, but they've been working to convert a lot of the lights over to LED, and with the grant program from MMU for LED conversion, that whole thing with bulb replacements and stuff has cost us about $20. So it's pretty amazing. The rebates were almost $700. So hats off to MMU and the work that does. So that's been really good for the library. A lot of good things happening there. The Southwest Minnesota Amateur Sports Commission met today at noon. We're having a board retreat on the 14th. We'll bring in some new members to work with us on that. So we're looking forward to that. Some of the things we're going to work on is going back over our governance, and then also marketing, trying to focus. We've got a good year under our belt out there now. So some things are working out really well. If you've noticed anybody on Facebook, last weekend on the 7th, there was a wedding on the Reinhardt rink, and if you can find that online, that was absolutely beautiful. I'm not sure whose wedding it was, but it's pretty impressive. So that shows some of the potential that happens out there. I know that just over the weekend with a handful of people that I chatted with, there was actually a lot of interest in what happened there. Also, kind of on a little bit bigger note about how events impact the community and with our tourism and the visitors, SMSU's 50th anniversary was a major hit. And according to President Connie Gores, that all the hotels in town were full, plus Granite Falls, Morton, and Canby were all significantly impacted to the point that they had people that had to stay in the dorms that came in order to house everybody. That's great. So Fuzzy's, the Varsity Pub, the Wooden Nickel, and the Gambler all had their largest weekends in history for traffic. So pretty positive event in the community. There's the 16-team Bantam tournament. The financial impact that had on the city of Marshall was estimated conservatively at $750,000. So part of the things that are coming up out there this year, early on between now and the end of November, there's going to be a Marshall High School Thanksgiving tournament. That'll be 4 communities at 3 different divisions, so 16 teams. But with the number of teams that'll actually have to stay in town, they're estimating that alone will have a $300,000 to $350,000 positive impact on the city of Marshall. So, yeah, it's a Marshall High School hockey tournament. So it's girls, JV, and varsity. And so there's 4 communities that are participating in that. There's a Bremer tournament November 10th and 12th. Actually, the ice is scheduled to go on a week on the 16th. So right after the Governor's Pheasant opener coming this weekend. So a lot of good things are starting to happen out there. Obviously, it's got a ways to go yet, but it's getting traction, and there's a lot of energy on that Southwest Amateur Regional Amateur Sports Commission. So I'm happy to be a part of that. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yep.
Community Services Board we met at the Red Baron Arena, and I just have to give kudos to Mr. Vandermillen. He's doing a really good job. He had us take a beta test survey, which is going to be going out to the community. So we took that, and it was a pretty good survey. He made some changes and some tweaks to make it even better, so that more community members are willing to take that survey, and that will help guide the decisions that community service does going forward. So, and the EDA did not.
It's my understanding Planning Commission doesn't need to meet this month. There's no business to take care of, and Housing Commission will meet on Monday.
The EDA and the utilities did not meet, but we did have a meeting of the committee of the municipal building. And the conclusion of that meeting, we invited 3 organizations to submit proposals regarding both the Marshall Hotel and the municipal building itself. One is a CTS group of St. Louis, Missouri, that there's an individual local in Marshall that is part of that organization. Another is TSP out of Sioux Falls, which Ron Halgerson is partially retired, put it that way. And then NGAN Associates out of Wilmer that recently redid the Wilmer Municipal Building. So those 3 received invites, and there will be a pre-proposal meeting next week. I think the 17th, was it? Tuesday. So that's moving ahead in that direction. So.
David?
The Police Advisory Board met on last week, 2 weeks ago on September 27th, and formalized actions that led to the appointment of the folks. A number of us were at the reception to welcome or recognize promotions for 4 members of the police department last week. Monday, October 2nd, it was my honor to represent the city, and on behalf of the mayor, presenting a proclamation to Pete Labatt in conjunction with the 70 years delay in receiving his World War II service medals. I was very happy to discover that Pete served in the Army Air Force in World War II. My dad, likewise, they're born 2 days apart. So my dad helped design the planes in Ohio, and Pete helped keep them operating in the Pacific. That was very neat to be part of that. And then October 3rd, the Airport Commission met.
Thank you, David. Thank you for representing us. Jim?
Might have not met. The Adult Community Center does meet tomorrow.
Very good. We'll move then to agenda item number 20. Council member individual items. Greg?
Nothing, Mayor?
Steve?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Glenn?
In the past, we've talked about conditional use permits and indicated that they go with the land and they last for a long period of time. Minnesota law also permits interim use permits, and it enables cities to issue temporary usage permits to property owners that allow for certain uses on a property but have an expiration date. And interim use permits should not be confused with conditional use permits, which become more long-term permanent permits as long as certain conditions are met in the use of the property. So what I'm wondering is if this is something maybe we could have the city attorney check into, and maybe that would be something we would want to use in the future. I know a number of counties and cities have these interim use permits, and they gave examples of some common interim uses, like a second home on a farm or vacation home rental or something that's considered a temporary situation. And I know we've given conditional use permits in the past where the thing is going to last for a number of years and then it's going to stop and it has an expiration date. So I'm just wondering if it would be good to have the city attorney check into this and see if that's something the city should consider as an ordinance.
I'd also suggest as liaison to the planning commission that you bring that up to the planning commission for discussion too. They can have some input. Very good. Jim?
Last Friday, I had a chat with city staff, Glenn, Jason Anderson, and Sheila, about the ordinances we have out there, the landscape ordinance and the aesthetic ordinance. And at this time, and after visiting with Glenn and Sheila, and Glenn in support of this, that we should revisit those ordinances. And at that conversation, at that point, she could turn over to L&O. I had suggested that I think we should have the mayor appoint a committee to do this, a committee of staff members, a committee of citizens of Marshall, and the committee of developers before it goes to L&O. And I think, Glenn, you were supportive of that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to propose that we do that, to take a look at these ordinances, because it's still an issue amongst builders and developers and the citizens of Marshall, these ordinances. And it came up, some folks brought it up to me a couple weeks ago on this, and I would like to go forward with that. And like I said, we should have the mayor appoint a committee to take a look at them, revise them, and then give it to L&O to do whatever they need to do with them. But I think we become a community effort instead of an effort done by just the city. We get the community involved. They own it then. They own that ordinance.
We had prior discussion about this. I think it's a good suggestion. And the charge to this task force, I'll call it, would be to make that recommendation. So legislative and ordinance committee really has something tangible to react to. I'll follow up on that, Jim. Good suggestion. Anything else?
No.
David?
Nothing else.
John?
None.
The only thing I would mention, and Greg, you did mention it this weekend, is the Governor's Pheasant opener in Marshall. There's been a lot of volunteer work that's gone into making that event successful, not just for the pheasant opener, but really the promotion of the city throughout the state. So there's quite a bit of attention that will be brought to the community. Number of events, including the banquet that will be attended by both the governor and lieutenant governor on Friday evening, and then there's breakfast, and then of course the hunt. So thank you for drawing that attention to that. Move on then to agenda item number 21. Staff report, Sheila?
I just have one thing, and that's just a reminder that the Marshall Green Step Community Forum is this Thursday, October 12th, at the Red Baron Arena and Expo. And a variety of staff members will be attending this, as well as I believe it was invited community-wide as well. So we will have good representation at this meeting.
Thank you. Glenn?
A few things. I think all the council members were notified of the Safe Routes to School eligibility for applying for grants. And so staff will be putting together a notice of intent to apply for a portion of about $7.5 million statewide for that grant. That may include electronic signage for pedestrian crosswalks and/or radar signage that would show what the speed limit is and what speed you're going. So that's just kind of an open-ended discussion that we have. It certainly could include other things as well, but I think that we will be sending a notice of intent that we would want to put together a grant request for next year's funding. Midwest Contracting is completing all the contractual requirements for the project at Commerce Park and is intending to begin construction next week with grading and underground work. Keekly Construction is the underground subcontractor for the job, and Midwest will be doing the grading portion for now. Always my comments are weather permitting. We had this real significant rainfall. It's proposed to be raining Saturday and Sunday of this week, so they want to get started and they're ready to go. Dennis has been working on some of the contractual things with the insurances and things like that. Bladholm Construction has begun work on the artwork out at the Red Baron Arena. We had a joint meeting with the artist and Bladholm Construction to kind of ask any questions, or it's really a big coordination project because the artist will be doing part of it while Bladholm is doing part of it. They'll both be out there at the same time. They will be working throughout the fall, acknowledging that we have the governor's hunt this weekend that's out there. We'll have hockey tournaments out there. We have different activities. So contractor is aware that of safety precautions that he'll need to take for the work area that he's working in, and having to work with others in the facility. Furniture Mark is Furniture Mark is working on improvements to their parking lot. They were paving some of it today, making improvements to the lot. We haven't received any building permit yet, but you can see that they're doing some investment in the area. We did have, I'm going to say we had a few comments, several comments, on the intersection of the access to ACMC and the roadway coming into O'Connell Street. There's two stop signs located, one coming out of the private drive and one on the public street, but no stop sign at the approaching street coming from the west. I did review it, recommend that we install a emergency locate of the stop sign there, and then we'll go through the required process to have council authorize it for our regulatory signing process. But I do think it's significant enough that we put it up now and monitor it. What happens is that people coming from the south or the east think that the other side is going to be stopped too, and they pull out in front of that traffic. Either turning left in front of them, it's turning left in front of them either direction, typically. So we're going to do that. I wanted to inform you of that, but we will go through a formal process of authorizing it. That's all I had. Do you have any questions?
Fine.
Yep.
Question on the, back to the plaza work at the Red Baron Arena and Expo. They're going to be putting in some available power taps in that build out also, and they're doing that right. So if there's a vendor show or something else and they want to do some outside display in that area, there's going to be power available.
I know that there's power available. I will check on the taps.
Okay, I mean, I'm just thinking that that might be, as long as it's opened up, that might be something advantageous to put in, similar to what's in the planters on Main Street, where they're sort of hidden, but they're available, maybe some 20 amp runs.
There's also a continued discussion on the signage
Right.
that may go in the area somewhere.
Okay.
But that's not in this project right now.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Len, we can talk in more detail on the specifics of this, but there has been some questions about the intersection of 23 and 59 and the traffic on Highway 23 if you're heading south-southwest, and there's the lanes that are green to go straight through, and when it turns green, sometimes that left turn light remains red, depending on the cycle. And I know that, there was a, fatal accident there that, that was actually probably the situation. I was at that intersection. Last weekend, the same thing happened where someone's in that left turn lane that goes south on Highway 59, lights turn green on the straight ahead, and everybody took off, even though that there was still red for the left turn. So I'm wondering if there could be a conversation with MnDOT about, is that just the way that cycling works, or should that actually be coordinated so that when the green lights turn on to go straight, that the left also is?
Should be triggered with a sensor in the road.
They're censored, but they're also, there's a sequencing.
Right.
And you're right. I personally like sequencing where they all turn green at the same time. The left turn green and the straight through greens on that one direction turn at the same time. But that's not how that intersection is signaled. So I can certainly ask for a review and get the reasons that it's set up the way it is. But I've seen that in many communities, that left turn signal is held for a long period of time before all the other traffic comes through and all this comes through and the left turn leaves, and then that left turn lane turns green. So it's really important that you follow the...
Yeah, so we can have some discussion on that.
Yeah, I can certainly talk about that.
Glenn, isn't that the same situation on Highway 23 and 19? When you try to turn, if you're not in the turn lane soon enough, it doesn't sense you, and you have to wait until it comes
You have to
again.
wait for the next...
So it's all a timing thing, and
sequence.
I think the reason is they feel if the sensor doesn't see anybody, why hold back the traffic going north when there's nobody to hold it for?
No,
So they-
if you're turning, are you turning right?
When you're turning left to go on to 19 from 23 on the north, when you go south on 23, if you're not in that turn lane to go east on 19, if you're not there in time, you have to wait a whole cycle before it lets you go.
Well, I think it's a little bit different there because it did actually turn green eventually.
It does, but it doesn't turn green when the straight throughs turn green.
Exactly, yeah, so
either.
that's the issue.
Okay.
Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At our last council meeting, we indicated we, the city, had received verbal confirmation from DEED that the city had been awarded the $2 million BDPI grant. Monday, October 2nd, the mayor, you, and our area legislators received the written confirmation. Yes, the grant, $2 million, has been awarded, which has then prompted quite a lot of activity with Midwest Contracting, reviewing the bonding and the insurance information. And that also involves then the Magellan pipeline encroachment easement, and that has been approved and is out there for signature as well. It's kind of been a time for a contract review. Library Board, Plum Creek agreement. Plum Creek is putting together a new agreement to be approved by, 8 counties, 20 cities, something like that. And so you get that many people reviewing, it may take some time to get approval.
And the two normal players are asking for a lot of rewrites.
I asked for a lot of rewrites, yeah, and I got the response from our local director. And then also the concessions agreement, concessions contract with the Marshall Area Hockey Association. They will be providing the concession work out at the Red Baron Arena and Expo. So that concession agreement is out there for review as well. So I think that'll do it for now.
Move then to, thank you, Dennis. We'll move to agenda item number 24, the pending agenda items. Any questions about the pending agenda items? Agenda item number 25 is the information items, including building permits. Then agenda item number 26, the upcoming meetings, which brings us then to agenda item number 27, to consider adjourning this meeting.
So moved.
Motion by David.
Second.
Seconded by Steve to adjourn. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Don't take that one on the road.
Motion passes.